Welcome back. Today we are doing a complete Palantir Q3 earnings preview. Palantir will be releasing its third quarter results on November 7th before the market open. What I'm most interested in seeing updates on include top-line revenue growth, earnings, and the impact of SPACs, if that's still the case, as well as stock-based compensation normalization and the profitability outlook. We will get to all of these in this video. Let's go. So, of the past 8 earnings reports, Palantir's stock has only increased after 3 of them. The last 4, the stock has decreased significantly. I bring this up only to say that Palantir's stock seems to have a negative reaction most of the time following earnings. I'm not always looking for what the stock reaction is, rather I'm looking for how Palantir continues to make progress on building some of the world's best software, the macro alignment being very important. We heard a lot of that from FoundryCon, and the growth. How is their sales function performing? My revenue expectations are as follows. $482 million for Q3. The guidance is for $475 million. Now, on average, over the last 2 third quarters for Palantir's history as a public company, we've seen a 10% increase in revenue growth on average quarter over quarter from Q2 to Q3. I'm only expecting a 2% quarter over quarter growth from Q2 to Q3 in 2022, and expecting a very small surprise from the guidance. Palantir's guiding for 0.4% quarter over quarter revenue growth, and that's 21% year over year growth, falling very short of the 30% target. And if Palantir was able to pull a rabbit out of a hat and reach 500 million, that would correspond to 28% year over year. So what is my track record on predicting some of this? Well, I said I'm expecting 482 million for the third quarter of 2022. I've been off by about 2% over the last 5 forecasting periods. Palantir's guidance has been also off by 2% to the downside. I have overestimated by 2% to the upside. The actual revenue has been falling in between that. You see with the gray line, I was on the blue line being a little too bullish over the last few quarters, and in Q2 of 2021, I was almost right on target. So here are the projections visualized, and you'll see here some slowing growth into the third quarter. So it's going to be very important to see how Palantir addresses this. Of course, we already know the impact of this slower growth because that was Palantir's guidance, was for less growth for the third quarter. So it's definitely reflected in the stock. It'll be interesting to see how they guide for Q4 and for 2023. As well as my gross profit, you'll see a similar trend, adding about $22 million in gross profit each quarter. And R&D, I'm expecting an uptick as Palantir continues to hire. And SG&A, a similar story, an uptick going back and potentially setting a new record for SG&A spend. And then that, of course, includes stock-based compensation. As well as the operating expenses, I'm not expecting an all-time high for operating expenses for Palantir. It'll be interesting to see their operating leverage because a new record on revenue and keeping operating expenses below previous record would be good to see. Operating income, I'm expecting a bit of a hit, as I said, relating to all of that hiring and the stock-based compensation. I don't think we've moved past that story just yet. Net income, though, I do expect to improve. I don't think the SPACs are going to be as big of an impact. We know those have been hammered down, and there's really not much further for them to fall, as well as Palantir's been winding down the program simultaneously. Now, I have a thread here from Maverick Equity, friend of the channel, whom I've been working with to get this Q3 preview ready. He put together these great 10 tweets on Twitter. Please go follow. I'll leave a link to his Twitter in the description. But for the next minute, I want to talk about Moomoo, a company that I've been working with to provide you with up to 15 free stocks. Moomoo is a brokerage firm based in Palo Alto, California. I'm in the app on Palantir stock, but I want to show you how great it is to learn more about Palantir. You can head to the summary page, view shareholder holdings, and see the latest details on percentage ownership, shares owned, changes over time, increases and decreases regarding positions. And here we get an earnings recap with revenues of $473 million and net income loss of $179 million. the business revenue composition breakdown, government coming in at 58% of revenue, regional with the United States at 57%. We can take a look at financial indicators, financial estimates going forward, the technical indicators, the company's valuation, the latest news. You can use Moomoo with a link in my description to learn more about Palantir and to buy, sell, or paper trade its stock. Thank you. In regards to Palantir's valuation since the direct listing, the price, the actual and estimated sales with free cash flow switching positive, you see that along the bottom in green. When Palantir had $1 billion in revenue, its price was $44. Now that Palantir has nearly $2 billion in revenue, its price is about $9. So what we're basically looking at here with that dashed blue line is estimates continuing to increase as the stock has continued to fall. That is called multiple compression. So Palantir's price to sales multiple has gone from north of 40 to under 10. It's crazy multiple compression, and that's a result of moving from a bull market to a bear market. And Palantir's revenue will continue to grow. I think as its revenue grows going forward, 10 price to sales will look cheap. Of course, that does depend on the macro. And as Palantir's revenue doubles from here, let's say, I think its stock price will more than double. In regards to Palantir's earnings history and surprises, actual EPS versus the EPS surprise, and the one-day price percentage reaction. If you feel like trading the stock and or options during the third quarter earnings, have this in mind. I would not recommend trading Palantir, but this video is not about that. In Q3 of 2020, we saw a beat and the stock rose 8%. In Q1 2021, we saw a beat and the stock rose 9%. In Q2 2021, we saw a beat and the stock rose 11%. In Q3, we saw a beat and the stock fell 9%. And then in 2022, it has been quite the disaster, stock falling between 16%, 21%, and 14% over the last 3 quarters. That's just a flavoring for how we've seen that reaction as I opened up this video. Now, in regards to the financial actuals and consensus, as I said, Wall Street and Palantir's guidance equals $475 million for Q3. I'm coming in with an estimate at $482 million, and they actually estimate in Q4 a run rate of $507 million with revenue growth just 21% and 17%. So this will be a real chance for Palantir on the earnings call to talk about and give some dialogue on how they can get back up to a higher revenue growth rate. But it will be great to see Palantir crossing that $500 million mark in quarterly revenue, which means their annual revenue run rate will be north of $2 billion. And this next bullet here, $1.9 billion for 2022, $2.3 billion for 2023, and $3 billion for 2024. That's growth of just 23%, 24%, and 25%, materially below the previous guidance. Again, I think if Palantir comes in above the expectations, this will be a chance for them to reframe the current status of the business. So here we have those estimates for the third quarter, $475 million, next quarter crossing that $500 million mark. And as we just talked about for the annual situation, Palantir did $743 million in sales in 2019, crossed $1 billion in 2020, did $1.5 billion in 2021, and hasn't been able to cross that $2 billion mark in 2022, but will significantly surpass it in 2023, and hopefully get to that $3 billion and beyond in 2024. Now, this is interesting. Regarding quarterly and yearly sales revisions, in August, when Palantir released its Q2 earnings results, look at the reaction from the forecast periods for Q2 of 2023, Q1 of 2023, the fourth quarter of this year, and the third quarter of this year, all plummeting. And also recall the nearly $1 billion in deal value Palantir booked in the third quarter of 2022, almost all of it coming from September. So with estimates plummeting, again, I'm going to keep saying it, now is the time for Palantir management to step in and say, you're going to reinstate the previous guidance. That would go a long way. So here's the Wall Street view. Q4 of 2020 was not the right time to be buying in hindsight, but currently with a 26% return potential based on the average analyst consensus, it's a different story. With a low target of $6 and a high target of $20, again, I am not the biggest fan of Wall Street analysts, but but now looks like a much more favorable time to be getting into the stock. In regards to the financial highlights since going public and what to watch going forward, revenue growth and margins are key for growth, specifically for SaaS companies. And recall how revenue growth in general is key for long-term stock performance. The key driver of long-term stock performance for total shareholder return is 74% revenue growth for 10 years and 15% margin. Multiple and free cash flow, much less important over the long run. But as you see, multiple for a 1-year basis is significantly important. It's like when we talked about Palantir's price to sales multiple compressing significantly. That's what's driven the stock down. Palantir stock trades a lot like ARK-K, which is heavily dependent on the Fed, right? The balance sheet change percentage over 1 year, you'll see in red there and in blue, how all of these tend to overlap. And as we were just saying, interest rates, liquidity, those all matter for valuation a lot. It's not an issue specific to Palantir, it's an issue for all stocks and equities in general. Now, this is interesting. Regarding a Palantir price floor, we can look at what Palantir was trading at in transactions before it actually listed, which was between $4.19 and $8.50. The blue circle shows the VWAP, which is more relevant, and $6.30 was the very latest. Palantir got very close to that price in public trading a few months ago, but it does potentially show a more lower bound limit for what the stock could be trading. And finally, what I believe to be the most important slide coming up is, when does Wall Street expect Palantir to become profitable? They expect profitability for GAAP earnings in 2024 and non-GAAP now in 2022. So here's the non-GAAP right here. In Q1 of 2022, Palantir reported a gain of 2 cents per share, and in Q2 of 2022, Palantir reported a loss of 1 cent per share. So right now we are actually positive on a non-GAAP basis for 2022. The analysts expect Palantir to generate 5 cents per share for fiscal year 2022, which means that would be another 4 cents gain from here. So potentially expecting 2 cents for this quarter and 2 cents for next quarter. But what I find more interesting is the GAAP metric, right? When is Palantir going to be profitable? The question that everyone asks. Analysts are expecting, and the consensus is, for that break even to happen in 2024. It's what I keep talking about, and it seems like that's what the consensus is at this point. First quarterly profits happening in 2024, and the full year profit of 16 cents per share happening in 2025. So moving past just the numbers, right, it's important for Palantir to be able to talk about what its core business does and how it is valuable. Turning that intangible information to actionable insights for alpha generation is what I always bring up. And for Palantir to communicate that its business is very important in the present day and will continue to thrive going forward is, of course, what we all want to hear. And if you're interested in much more of the financials, you can go to palantirvision.com. I just updated the Palantir valuation model on October 27th. I will be posting an update to it after the earnings release, but you can use code PREVIEW to get 20% off for a limited time. Hopefully this was helpful. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments. Until next time.